welcome to those who are joining us. Hi, glad you're here. We're going to talk about soil. I see a couple of familiar faces and many more that I don't know. Welcome to all.
I still haven't figured out the music thing. We should figure that out next time. Get some jams on this.
Oh, we should
Who's a,
definitely have some jams.
who's a
What are,
good
what are the
singer?
best songs about soil?
I know Nicole made one. That should be the intro.
I did make one. That's right. I forgot about that. I was gonna say another one bites the dust.
Hmm. My friend wrote a song called Mean Texas Clay, but that's actually about Lee Harvey Oswald. Probably not appropriate for the venue.
Love Plantasia, Eleni. So good. For those of you who are joining, we're love for you to just say hi in the chat or even maybe quick come off and say hi and where you're calling in from and more importantly, what you're really curious about learning in soil health and urban ag venues. So use whatever way to communicate you feel comfortable with.
Oh, Rachel just mentioned a banger, Secret Life of Plants by Stevie Wonder. Yeah, it's probably it.
Oh, Stevie Wonder. Sometimes it's happened to me more than once. I'll just think, this song is really, what a fun song. It's a great song. And then I'll learn it was a Stevie Wonder song, and I'm like, of course. How could I not know? So good.
We'll wait another just couple minutes before we get started. We see Christine has a message, a welcome message in the chat to those of y'all who haven't sounded off. Would love to know where you're coming from. Pass out a little survey once we do some partner introductions here, but would love to know where you're coming from and maybe what interests you about the topic of urban soil health.
I am walking, so I'm not going to be. I might run and walk into something if I'm text typing and walking at the same time. I'm Rachel in Milwaukee, and I'm interested in. I've been thinking a lot about the rental gardens and things like that, and everyone's trying to take things out. Everyone wants something from it, and they want they want their vegetables. I do too. Want our produce, but there's not a lot of focus on like what we're putting back in order to get something out. And so I've just been thinking a lot about that and like remediating relatively poor soil, stuff like that.
I have an inside track as to Rachel's situation, and she really knows the situation in as far as super poor and depleted community garden soils go. She's been rehabilitating a plot over the past number of seasons and has a lot to show for it. Genevieve says, how to keep nutrients and cycle dirt in my container plants. Interesting. Yeah, urban growers, we do a lot of container growing.
That's one of the topics of interest that people have been talking about, different types of gardening in urban farms. And so I think that should be one of the titles that we'll talk about in a few months' time, probably.
Sure. So we're at 5 after the hour. Folks may continue to trickle in, but there's just so much conversation we need to have about soil health. Um, And I think we should just dive in with some introductions of the organizations who are leading this webinar series. And I will go first by introducing myself and my colleague Meg Sargent. We both work for UW Extension, which is the outreach arm of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. We work in the Extension Milwaukee County Urban Agriculture Program, and we thrive on partnerships. So one of the wonderful things about the past couple years has been our work collaborates with through our work we collaborate with Michael Field's Agricultural Institution. We have Esther, we have Christine, we have Nicole, we have Chris in the room from, am I forgetting anybody? Hope not. From Michael Fields. And these wonderful folks are going to give a lot more of the substance of this talk, particularly Dr. Nicole Tautges, who's an agronomist and a lover of healthy soils. I can go on and on about how much Nicole knows, but you'll all know that pretty shortly anyway. So, and then finally, we're joined by Advocates for Urban Agriculture, which is a Chicago area organization. Vale Espinosa is a wonderful organizer and somebody who thinks deeply about the health of urban soils as it connects to people and food systems. And it's a real honor to be in the room with all of this brain power on soil health. So without too much further talking on my end, we have a short survey which would like participants, a short poll. Yes, we hope that it's popped up in front of you. If you can go ahead and select which of these lobes of the greater megacity we belong to, then we can move forward. Oh, and folks keep adding their perspectives, their backgrounds in from the chat. So we have Amber, who's interested in soil health, lead, water usage in the soil. Justin from Milwaukee, appropriate times to leave bare soil for planting. Elizabeth, how and when to keep soil/pollinators healthy when immediate neighbors are using synthetics? Very interesting question. So I don't know if you saw the results from that poll flash across the screen, but they're gone now. Looks like we're slightly more Milwaukee heavy. Let's go ahead and transition to hearing some remarks from Nicole Tautges, who I don't know if you're going to pick up where you left off or what you have in store for us, Nicole, but I'm really looking forward to it. I always learn something. Take it away, please.
Thank you, Martin. I do have slides this time, a little more prepared. Gonna really focus on very practical things today. So I have pictures of soil amendments and cover crops. So I think a lot of where we focused on fundamentals last week. It was only a week ago. And so we're going to just dive right into exactly what you should actually do, what you should practice in your gardens in terms of managing healthy soils. Bear with me while I get this sharing booted up here. Let's see. Hold on. Okay. Can folks see my slides? Great. I'm gonna hit present. So this always take a minute. So I want to talk about improving soils. I think a lot of us have heard about regenerative agriculture. Regenerative means that regenerative sort of assumes that we're starting from the basis of depleted soils. And it talks about regenerating sort of the health or life-giving properties that have been sometimes mystically applied to soils. I think I'm a little less precious about soils a lot of the time. They're not inherently life-giving. They're really unproductive soils. There are highly productive soils. It just depends on the parent material. So what rocks initially formed that soil and what plants were able to colonize and microbes were able to colonize that soil and create sort of highly productive, high organic matter situations, or which ones have been waterlogged or drought blasted or compacted. So those are going to be less productive soils. And all of those things that make less productive soils can occur naturally from nature, or they can be anthropogenic or human derived in nature. In those types of situations, which I think a lot of us come here wanting to learn more about, what can we do? So I want to talk about improving soil for crop production. I took this picture today. This is a stand of red clover I'm very proud of. And that is an example of a very lush cover crop. And that is red clover that's been growing for I think more than 2 years. So it does take time to create a stand like this. Let's jump right in. Oh, sometimes advancing slides is sluggish. Okay, great. So you have to bear with me, sorry. Number one principle of soil improvement is add organic matter. Add it over and over again. Add it in the spring before you plant. Add it in the fall after you harvest. Add it anytime you feel like you need to improve the tilth or workability of soil. Before this started, Vale talked about getting a couple yards of compost delivered to her garden. That's exactly right. That's a great example of what we're talking about. This is a picture of an industrial composting facility. This is where when you purchase compost, it should come from a place that looks like this. What do we need to know about compost? It should have the compost or any organic matter that you're inputting into your soil or spreading on top. Ideally, it should have a less than 30-to-1 carbon to nitrogen ratio. And that's because when the carbon to nitrogen, so that means for every 30 kind of units of carbon, whether that be grams or pounds or whatever unit of measure we're measuring in, for every 30 grams of carbon, we want to have 1 gram of nitrogen in our material. And the reasons for that are complicated. And if I end up with extra time, I can start to go into that. But in a nutshell, once you get, nutshells have a higher C to N ratio than 30-to-1. In a nutshell, yeah, that was for you, Martin. When you go over that ratio, you're actually taking nitrogen in the soil and it's becoming unavailable to plants. And again, I can go into the science of this later if I have time. When you're more like 15-to-20 of a C to N ratio, those are conditions where there's an abundant enough nitrogen that carbon's not being immobilized or made biologically unavailable. Generally, under 30-to-1 C to N ratio, you are creating conditions for microbes to release nitrogen. Again, I have a hard time talking about this without going into underlying science, so I'm going to leave it at that, and we can circle back. Good compost should be made of both green and brown materials. So for any of us who have tried composting before, if you put only like very wet, rich, high fertility, like if you only compost food scraps, you're going to end up with a compost pile that's too high in nitrogen. It's going to be very stinky. You're going to be able to smell, and you're going to notice that it's very wet and it's giving off an odor, and that's bad compost. You need to have, it's not composting, it gets stuck because you have to have the ideal or the correct C to N ratio for those microbes to break that down and to make it look like this. So in those situations, we'd be adding brown material, which would, in a home composting situation, we actually like shred paper and newspaper, and we'll use that. You can mix in kind of brown grass clippings or straw or wood, as long as it's chopped up into small bits. That's because you're trying to get your compost at that right carbon to nitrogen ratio. If you're just buying compost, you don't need to worry about this too much. I think a lot of us are probably interested in home or garden composting, so that's why I'm sharing this. It's also just these are dynamics that you'll notice when you're adding organic material into your garden as well. So make sure that you're not just putting in really rich stuff. It actually does need a balance of the brown material as well. Industrial compost, you'll also notice I like this picture because it shows steam coming off of this. When you buy professionally composted compost, they are making sure that the inside of these piles are reaching over 140 degrees Fahrenheit for over 2 days consecutively. And the reason that that needs to happen is because those temperatures kill soil pathogens. So these are like disease-causing microorganisms that can cause disease if that compost is applied to your garden, and they will get onto your plants. When you get over 140 degrees Fahrenheit for a couple days, then those pathogens cannot survive those temperatures. They're not thermophiles. So that's important from a disease management standpoint. The other reason we need to hit those temperatures is because also weed seeds generally cannot survive those temperatures. They'll get too hot and they just won't be viable anymore. They'll die. Those are both things that are very important and that you want to happen. That's a great reason to invest in professional, industrially large scale compost purchasing because of those two things. The flip side of that is if you're getting compost that a friend made or was an uncomposted manure pile. Horse manure piles are notorious for this. It is highly likely that you will be importing viable weed seed from those situations. And that's not to say don't do it, but you should know that that's a risk. I actually had a cropping trial that I did, and we had a split plot where I spread manure in strips on half, and there was a literal line of weeds that you could see because they came in that manure, and that's how I know that they came in this manure that hadn't been composted sufficiently, even though I was told that it was. So, things to keep in mind about adding compost, and it should be done year after year, ideally multiple times a year, is one of the best things you can do to improve your soil. Whether you have clay, whether you have sandy soil, compost application will improve both. A really important part of soil health is actually soil fertility. So that's why I love working in the soil fertility field. It's because having enough fertility available for plants just helps the plants solve their own problems. So I threw this up. I get a lot of questions about, I get a lot of questions about like different kinds of manure and what kind of manure should I get. So you can see there's sort of inorganic and organic. I'm not going to have time to go into this, but you'll see like swine manure is very good in terms of having a lot of nitrogen. Poultry manures do it very good. You're just getting, and these are liquid, but that's a farm situation. You're going to ignore that. We're not generally going to be getting liquid manure. We're going to be getting like solid manure. So you can see poultry manure is very high in nitrogen. Beef, dairy, not so much. Those have more straw mixed in. So just keep that in mind if you're importing manure or when you're buying it. Kind of these are and this is total nitrogen. Not a lot of this is going to be available. Honestly, out of poultry manure, this might have 26% total nitrogen. Probably 4% or less of that is going to be available right off the bat. So just keep that in mind. When we apply these on like a per acre basis, we're doing 2 to 4 tons of application. In a raised bed, 50 pounds is way more than sufficient. You're probably thinking about the 10 to 20 pound range on a typical raised bed area. Practice crop rotation. This is good for a variety of reasons, but it also helps foster a healthy soil microbial community. I like this figure because it shows a couple 4 different key kind of types of vegetable functional groups. Make sure you're not planting your tomatoes in the same bed every year. Make sure you're not planting your cabbages in the same bed every year. You will notice disease start to develop. You're going to want to rotate those around. If you only have one community garden, like don't plant the same thing in the same place every year. Rotate that around. That's very important. Again, with soil fertility, I talked about compost, I talked about manure. Bone meal can be tremendously beneficial. I see a lot of phosphorus and calcium deficiencies in gardening situations. Why is that? Vegetables take up and remove a lot of phosphorus, potassium, and calcium. That's just a function of these horticultural crops. So these need to be replaced. This is best incorporated into the soil before you plant, but you can also, in a case of deficiency, you can apply, if you observe deficiencies, for example, blossom end rot in zucchinis, you can apply this right at the base of the plant and water it in, and it will actually start to, in real time, ameliorate the problem. I mean, it's not going to fix the fruits that already have blossom end rot, but the new fruits that are being set are probably the plant will have taken up enough of this to solve the problem. This fish fertilizer, this can be applied, like put in a watering can or a bucket, and if you pour it over the plant, the leaves will take up some of this, and then it will also fall onto the soil and get incorporated into the soil via watering, and then the plant can take it up through its roots as well. So, and then these are good for the plants, these are good for the soil. Don't be shy. Another really important consideration is to only do disruptive activities where you're planting. So I do really like this picture on the left because you can see they're tilling where they're going to plant and they're not tilling where they're not going to plant. You're leaving that soil undisturbed. When you're not tilling and applying nutrients and water where you're not growing a crop, you're also not watering the weeds and you're not fertilizing the weeds and you're not giving them light and air to grow. So it solves a lot of problems, other problems besides soil health, to just kind of till and disturb where you don't need to disturb to produce your crop, keep it covered. And that is getting into our soil health improvement principle number 4, which is use cover crops and keep soil covered. So I've got we can run through really quick the most common types of cover crops. Rye, it's hugely popular. It's very winter hardy. It germinates really well. The seed is very cheap. You can plant it as early as the end of August, and you can plant it as late as December 1st through even the 15th, because we don't really have freezing conditions very often before that anymore. So a lot of the growers that I know who use cereal rye on a large scale are even planting into December. And then you'll want to terminate that in the spring. You'll want to do soil tillage to terminate this. It does regrow. It's very vigorous, so keep that in mind. But what rye does is it improves soil tilth. It's definitely going to keep the soil in place. And it's going to input a lot of, you can think of like that brown material, the biomass. Rye, now this will all take up nitrogen in your soil. So it prevents nutrients and pollution from leaving your garden, but it will also tie it up for a time. So just keep in mind it's consuming nitrogen and that it takes multiple years for that nitrogen to cycle back out. So you will want to keep the nitrogen fertilization in mind. As opposed to like a white or a red clover, white stays shorter, but is very vigorous, and red tends to elongate and grow taller and stand up more. Both are great. It just kind of depends on what you want out of your cover crop in terms of stature. You could plant white or red clover anytime during the year. They are perennial. They'll keep coming back. I love using them for like paths. So I'll seed this and I'll keep that covered as my path. And that nitrogen that clover fix is going into my soil and it's like feeding microbes primarily, right? Like we talked about last time. And then it is slowly leaking out in the system over time. You can plant white or red clover and you can mow it over and over again and you're growing your own nitrogen fertilizer. And then when you incorporate that into the soil, you're incorporating your own nitrogen fertilizer. So you can do that for a year, you can do it for half the year. Kind of depends on what your planting plan is. yeah, and I think this is my last slide. So in terms of other options, non-grass or legume, buckwheat's a great one. Seeds really cheap, generally abundant. It all of these you can broadcast by hand, lightly rake soil over the top. You don't need to like plant it with a drill or a planter. And you don't need to, it germinates really easily. You don't need to do anything special to plant it, which is why these are great cover crops for gardeners. And so buckwheat is highly drought resistant. You can plant it during diverse times of the year, but it will kill at the first sign of a frost. So that'll happen right away in the fall. And then conversely, you wouldn't want to plant it in like April, whereas the rye and the clovers they're all frost hardy, so they could be planted anytime. Buckwheat's very heat tolerant. It's great for pollinators. It has highly nutritious pollen. So if that's a priority for you, then buckwheat is a wonderful option. And there's a lot of anecdotal reports about buckwheat like bringing phosphorus, particularly phosphorus, from deeper soil layers up. I haven't found a lot of good scientific evidence for that, but in essence, there are a lot of people who think it improves soil tilth and might be doing something for phosphorus. At the same time, this is another one. It absolutely uses nutrients. So it takes them up. So if you're growing these things, if you're cutting them and removing them, you are removing nutrients from your soil. So the idea with cover crops is that you want to mow them and mulch them, and the nutrients will kind of leak in via water over time. Some of them will volatilize if you're leaving them on the surface. Or you want to incorporate them when it is a good time to do so, like right before planting, or when when we think about tillage, I'm getting asked to do tillage a lot right now. When you're tilling during a hot, dry period, and think about you're baking your soil. So you really only want to till right before you plant, or right before you have another soil covering activity, or right before there's going to be like decent rain, and you also have a plan for keeping the soil in place. You don't want to till when it's hot and dry. You're just moving your soil moisture down. Super important. I think we really we're all a little bit too till happy. And again, that's where, I think that no-till vegetable production is really hard. Like these plants have been bred to be used to really tilthy root environments. They're not used to having to fight that hard. So we usually see pretty large yield and establishment difficulties in no-till vegetable production. But if you're really just tilling in that row of planting, then you're really keeping a lot of the rest of that soil structure preserved. And then if you're covering that, you've got kind of like refuges between where you're tilling. And I love straw. Always have a bale of straw by your garden and just throw it on. I think only last year when I created kind of like disease conditions by over mulching in a really wet year was the only time when straw mulching was deleterious. 9 out of 10 cases, you can't use too much straw. And that's all I have for today, and I'll hand it off. Thank you.
Nicole, thanks. And some folks have put questions into the chat. Once we circle around, I hope we can get to a few of those. There's some really nice ones. But with no further ado, I'd love to hand the floor to Meg Sargent, who will introduce our next presenter.
Hey everyone, my name is Meg. Again, I'm with the UW Extension Urban Agriculture Program. I'm the coordinator for the Milwaukee Urban Demonstration Farm Network, aka MUD. Please call us MUD. I think it's such a fun name. We're a new collaborative program between UW Extension, the USDA NRCS National Resources Conservation Service, and farmers, and we're designed to demonstrate innovative conservation practices in urban agriculture. And I'm super excited to introduce Carly Ledger from Aromatic Acres. She is one of the demonstration farms in our network and prepared a beautiful little bio here that I'm going to pull up and read here. Give me just a sec. Aromatic Acres is an urban flower farm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, growing unique seasonal blooms that move with the rhythm of the Midwest. On just half an acre, they bring an artist's eye to every detail, ensuring each flower is grown, harvested, and arranged with intention. Their practices, excuse me, are rooted in regenerative, chemical-free methods, nurturing the soil, pollinators, and their community. And with that, I will pass it over to Carly to share more about Aromatic Acres and their soil management practices.
Thanks, Meg. That was a really nice intro. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me today. I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit about the last decade or so of things that we have done in our urban farm. I believe Esther has some slides she's going to help me out with, so thank you, Esther, for that. So yeah, as I mentioned, we've been growing for almost a decade, and when I say we, it's my husband and I. We are co-owners of Aromatic Acres. We have learned a lot by trialing so many different things, and we'll talk through some of those things. And one thing that we should note here is that we are a high production farm. We are growing for markets, and we are also growing for profits. So this might be a little, there's some like business considerations that I'm going to talk about in this presentation as well. So go ahead, Esther, with the next slide. So yes, that is my husband and I, Joseph. That's us at the Wauwatosa Farmers Market. That is where we vend every Saturday, and it is just a seasonal parade of flowers. We are horticulturalists, artists, and urban farmers. Go ahead with the next one, Esther. Our farm is located at Firefly Ridge, which is part of the UW Extension Community Garden Network. That is in Milwaukee County in the city of Wauwatosa. Firefly Ridge is about 11 acres total. Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody jump in. But we are growing on 3 different plots throughout the garden, totaling about a half an acre. And in the photo, this is some of our cosmos. You can see some of our permanent beds as well. Next. All right, so yes, permanent raised beds. We use a permanent raised bed system. Most of our beds are 50 feet long, some are 25, and that is if you are running a business, it's very nice for standardizing everything like drip tape, for example. And we do use drip irrigation. We reuse it from year to year, and it does need repairs from year to year, so Gorilla Tape. If you are an urban grower using drip irrigation, no need to toss out things. You can buy yourself some Gorilla Tape. We grow perennials, annuals, hardy annuals, and biennials at our farm. The farm is almost always in production, except during the winter months, the soil is not in production. So go ahead with the next slide. In this presentation, we're going to talk about how our business started versus what it is today, urban soil reality, and some of our top challenges, things that we've tried, how we're currently managing, some advice for the growers, and then we'll have our Q&A at the end. Next. All right, so this is a picture of the early days of Aromatic Acres. We have some cardboard, or not cardboard, maybe it is cardboard, like it was a roll of cardboard. And that stuff just did not work very well for us. It is biodegradable, so that's great, but it is also, you can see in the bottom left corner, it does not stay put very well. So go ahead with the next slide. We started our farm thinking we were going to have a medicinal herb farm, and we were going to grow calendula, chamomile, rudbeckia, different roots, things like that. We quickly realized that that small urban scale was not going to work for this type of production. But healing and community focus is still part of what we do today. Go ahead with next. What happened is, you can see we got some borage going on there, and I grew those pink Senorita zinnias, those cactus zinnias, and with my background in fine arts, they just blew me away and I was hooked. It was just going to be flowers forever. So since 2018, we have been growing just specialty cut flowers. Next. Okay, so I took this picture today, and this is our farm. These are our thistles. It looks like it is a cover crop of thistles, and that is one of the realities of urban soils. Go ahead, next. So when we came to Firefly Ridge, the gardens had been tilled. They were very compacted, pretty standard of your urban soils. It's also a communal space, so sharing with other community gardeners. I know someone put into the chat, when your neighbor is using chemicals, what do you do? And then, of course, the reality is the weeds, 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 weeds. Always trying to keep up with the weeds. And in the picture on the right, we have a beautiful stand of foxglove. Next. All right, so our top four ongoing challenges are the perennial weeds. So we have all the culprits here: bindweed, quackgrass, creeping Charlie, and the thistles, multiple kinds of thistles. Something else that's challenging as an urban grower when you are growing for market is the input costs of amending with compost and the labor associated with that. So that is something to consider. We were spending close to $1,000 a year on professional compost, and that can be a lot, especially when you get started. But as Nicole said, it's the best thing you can do, and especially if you're growing in a smaller space, just invest in it, because it's gonna really help with your soil. Something else is when you're growing for production is physical strain. So how your body ages, there's overuse injuries, some things I've been dealing with over the past 3 years. And then, of course, small scale, high production. So you don't have vacant areas where you can just plant cover crops and let them sit for long periods of time. Now, there are some things that we are considering, like the clover in the pathways. I really love this idea because mostly in our pathways we have dandelions, and we mow those dandelions throughout the season, and I would like a different solution. So next slide, please. We have been growing pretty serious. We had about 4 seasons of no-till farming. And I really think that no-till farming, as Nicole mentioned, is very challenging. You do not get the soil tilth that you need for planting. I love the philosophy behind it, but after 4 seasons, it really burnt me out. So go ahead with the next slide. When we were using these no-till methods, some of the things we did were just topping with compost. We weren't using any tools to blend the compost into the existing soil. So again, something that was really challenging with the professional compost we had is that it was almost hydrophobic. The water would not seep into the compost very well. But after the season was over, we got pretty lush results, very green, beautiful, leafy flowers. But I don't think plants, I don't think it really impacted the blooms as much. I also think that compost is very expensive as a business owner and that it feeds the weeds as well. So sheet mulching, we did this one year where we picked up a bunch of free cardboard. We put all the cardboard down, put compost on top. This was, with the compost, it gives you that really great tilth, but again, this was a very labor intensive process for us. Next. Okay, so we have also tried tarping. There's a lot of information out there in the farming world about tarping. We've used woven landscape fabric, and what we found is even on places where we have left that fabric on for 2 to 3 years, it does not prevent the perennial weeds from coming up. In fact, we've had the outer perimeter of one of our fields right now has been covered in this fabric for, probably 6 or 7 years. And there are thistles that are raising the plastic probably 12 inches right now. So it is not doing anything. I don't recommend this product to anyone. Don't love it. We've also we've used the broad fork, but again, that's an awesome tool for breaking up compaction, but it doesn't do anything for the soil tilth, and it is a brutally physical task. So here we are. So after the 2023 growing season, our bodies were feeling it. We were experiencing injuries, and we just said, we can't do this. Like, we just gave in. And so never again with this very strict no-till management. Go ahead with the next. So what we did is we bought a BCS, walk behind tractor, and it was a great investment for us. And instead of buying the tiller, the rear tiller, we decided we wanted to purchase a power harrow implement. So that is what you see on the back of the picture here. And go ahead next. So this was a pretty significant financial investment. I know that this is not accessible to everyone, and this took us like quite a while to save for, but it was worth every single penny just for our bodies alone. So we purchased a rollerblade flail mower, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a mower, and then the power harrow, which we use when we are prepping our rows to get that tilth. Next slide, please. This is a picture of the bottom of the power harrower. It has about these like 6-inch long tines, and what the tines do is they move back and forth kind of like this against each other, and they stir the soil almost like egg beaters. So you're not tilling up the soil, and it is my understanding that this is better for the soil structure versus a tiller. Nicole, please correct me if I'm wrong. What's really great about the power harrow too is you can set it to whatever depth you like. It is what took us 3 weeks to prep our fields for planting, we can now do in a half day. So again, if you're running a business or thinking about running a business, these efficiencies are something you really want to consider. Next. And here is the flail mower, and basically what that does is you run it over your crops. This is a stand of cosmos. They were probably 4 or 5 feet tall, and Joe is mowing them down. The flail mower that we have it breaks down organic matter and mulches right into your bed, which I love because that is kind of giving you that straw effect. It's covering your soil. It's acting as a mulch. And we flip our beds multiple times throughout the season. So when we flip in the middle of summer, it's nice to have that organic matter on the top of your bed. So Martin has been really wonderful and encouraging us to utilize cover crops. And so in this picture, this is peas and oats that we planted last fall, and this was awesome. I am now totally converted to cover cropping. I love it. It kept the weeds down and created, when it died back in the winter, created a nice mulch over our soil as well. So go ahead with the next slide. What I have learned about growing over the last decade is there's some really important things to know. You need to respect your physical limitations because healing journeys are going to set you back. They're really long and they are also expensive. Physical therapy for 6 months is, yes, an investment. So think about that. If you are like die hard, no till, just think about how you're going to protect your body in the long run to either enjoy your business or your hobby. We have decided that instead of going no-till, our goal is to reduce our tillage, not to just eliminate it. We need that tilth in order to plant. You just cannot run a production farm without that tilth, that nice soil that your plugs can go into. And I will also just add that we do not plant anything from seed at our farm. The weeds just take it over too quickly. So everything we grow is from plugs. And typically we grow pretty small plugs, 128 plugs, if you're familiar. So we don't need a lot of depth for that tilth, maybe just a few inches. And then we are all about conserving the soil while maintaining efficiency. If you're growing for market, if you have no profits, you have no farm. And so this is really a balance of protecting people, planet, and profit if you are going to run a business. Next. So I do have just some short pieces of advice for anyone who is a new grower or thinking about growing for market. This picture, some of our fields, again, where it looks like grass is mostly weeds and dandelions that we mow, that I am very interested in turning over into a clover cover crop. So next. Okay, so your soil system has to support you as well, not just your plants. Don't break your body to subscribe to, one way of doing things. There's a lot of farmers out there who are marketing you certain ways of doing things, and if it doesn't support you and your plants, then move on to the next thing. I would say avoid the dogma, just be flexible, learn to adapt, because by just subscribing to these dogmas, you just need to be open to new ideas. So yes, choose tools that match your context also. So our scale, the half acre, the BCS, is great. If you're growing on a 4x8 veggie bed, awesome. You're going to use different tools. You're going to use different methods than we use. Consider your budget and your body as well. Keep learning and stay humble. Not everything is going to work. You're going to try things and you may fail, and just move on and keep going to the next thing. There's not one system that works for everyone, no matter how many people are going to try and sell you on their system that is the best. Go ahead with next. That's all I really have. If we want to open up the Q&A, let's go ahead and do that. Thank you all for letting me talk a little bit here, and look forward to the questions.
Carly, thank you so much. I always learn something when you share, and your insights about pairing self-care with earth care are profound in this moment. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
We have lots of questions, and my sense from so there are a couple that I want to make sure that we get to, um, which is one question which has come up a bit is this uh, thing of clover in the aisles. A lot of people have been talking about planting clover between production beds, and I'm wondering, Nicole, if you have thoughts about that.
I love clover. I think the easiest time to seed it, the easiest time to establish it is really in March. I know it's early and we're not ready to go yet, so it's difficult to get her done. But I can help you access clover seed. Martin can too. I think, at the farm level, we order 50-pound bags of it, and it's just kind of easier to deal with it. It is rather expensive. I think typically a 50-pound bag of clover seed is like two to $250. That being said, like maybe you can split it with somebody or get a smaller amount, or we can just give you some. Ideally, or you can just pay for your portion. Um, I've never bought it on like the more garden scale, like the seed packets. So I'll just share that that's our experience, and myself or maybe UW Extension are happy to help you with that. And if we can like pool resources, then it can be cheaper and easier. Again, you just kind of broadcast it. The pro to broadcasting it in March is that this thing occurs in Wisconsin called frost heaving in terms of seed incorporation. So you don't need to worry so much about rake it. These freeze thaw cycles are kind of making soil do this. And through that, farmers in this area have learned over time that that works really well for clover establishment. They're very small seeds. So if you can get it done in March or April, that's ideal. You can plant the rest of the year, but it's going to be weedier and it's just going to be slow to establish. I saw somebody ask how long you have to wait to walk on it. Probably a good 6 months. It's a perennial, so it's going to take time. It also does spread because it has the stem of clover actually is not a true stem. It's I think it's a petiole. Yeah. So the stem part of it is actually runs like right on top of the ground or right underneath the ground. So it's actually kind of like how strawberries and their stolons work. Very cool plant. It will spread. I mean, just keep your edges like tilled. You're probably going to be doing some kind of tillage. You absolutely can walk on it. It's great to like you can mow with a push mower your lanes, and you take that biomass, you could like throw it and use that as straw or where you need cover because then that's gonna have nitrogen that you're putting in. So yeah, I really love using clover. It's just fantastic. The pollen of white clover, I think both, but I know white clover is also highly nutritious. So if you let that go to flower, which white clover will flower when it's still very short statured, then that's going to provide pollinator benefits as well. And I completely forgot about oats and peas. I'm so glad you put that in, Carly. Yeah, great, great cover crop.
Yeah,
Hardly.
we had great
Sorry.
success with that. That was Martin's suggestion, and it was nice to plant that so late too, and have we had a pretty mild fall, but it went on and did really well.
An oat will winter kill, just so everybody knows. Actually, almost all peas will winter kill. You'll find people out there that say that we have winter peas, and actually, it might work in a garden context. Out on farmland, there are not generally winter peas that can survive our Wisconsin winters. So just keep that in mind. That's more of what's going to be like a spring or a fall cover crop. What's nice if you do use that in the fall, and I don't know if you've used it that way before, Carly, but it will like if you get decent biomass, then it'll winter kill, and then it'll just terminate itself, and you don't have to worry about dealing with it in the spring.
Yeah, that I think that's essentially exactly how Carly and Joseph used it, if I'm not mistaken. They planted sometime in mid-September and then it made a big stand and killed down at first frost and then protected the soil all winter.
Yeah, 10
Um,
out of 10. Ta-da.
Cool. Well, Carly, I'm looking for questions specific to you, and I don't know if I see any of those, but I want to ask you one of my own, which is you've talked about this balance between earth care and good business, and I'm wondering, this is not exactly a soil question, but it's a having a farm business question. What are the things that you have had to learn about running a business that have that you wouldn't have assumed, or that were surprising to you, or that you're continuing to learn? That's a piece that I really love that you emphasized, because I think that people get away from that commonly.
Yeah, I mean, I like to, in my ideal life, I would grow these flowers and I would give them away. Like, that would make me so happy. And so I've really had to learn to, um, look at the books, look at my finances. I've had to, I have worked another job for 7 years before I became fully self-employed. That was absolutely exhausting, but if you can make it through that and get to your, pay yourself what you need to get paid, um, it's great. So I think, for when we first started the farm, it was like every year, it was like, $800 in compost. I don't care. Like, that's what we need to do. And then as you start to realize, like, okay, you want to pay yourself. Okay, well, what can you cut back on? Do you only use that much compost every other year? Do you buy a compost-based potting soil mix that you can grow really healthy transplants into? So you're kind of making some sacrifices here and there to find what is going to work for you. Instead of just giving everything away because you're a grower and it's like such a joy to do. It's like, no, you really need to get paid. And something else I will say is just like setting boundaries is really important. Setting boundaries with your business as a farmer. I mean, right now it's insane. We're working some 16-hour days. Like, it's just the time of year, and being able to say, okay, no, we're taking a day off because we need to rest, and not only our bodies, but like our minds. And also setting boundaries with customers. But that could be its own webinar. Martin, does that answer your question?
I think that's such a elegant way to answer that question. We've heard more and more growers asking themselves that basic question: what do I need out of this to be happy and healthy? And front loading that thinking as the precondition for whatever you're doing on the farm, I think is really cool. And I love seeing people practicing it. There's one more softball for you. And you don't happen to know anything, Carly, about dahlias and zinnias, do you?
Nothing.
Yeah. Any any like secret tips that you're willing to share for growing beautiful blooms for those plants?
So I would say the number one tip to grow beautiful plants is to use a really great potting mix. And so we use Vermont compost. Yes. Is it coming from Vermont? Yes. So there's a lot of miles on that. Is that great for the environment? No, but it's really good for my business and my plants. So again, it's kind of that balance, like, what are you willing to give or take? But yeah, so that's my number one piece of advice, is grow them in great potting mix. Quality seed is really important. And I will also say with the dahlias, we start our dahlia tubers in 4-inch pots, and we plant them out closer to Memorial Day instead of putting them directly into the the tuber just into the soil without, seeing any eyes or anything. We've just learned for us that prevents rot. And I will say too, the dahlias, heavy, heavy feeders. The compost is an amazing solution for the dahlias. We put on a pretty heavy addition of compost one year, and the dahlias were like 6 feet tall and just incredibly productive. It was amazing. So yeah, go for the compost, and also cut them. The more you cut the flowers, the more they're going to produce. So yeah, that's what I got.
That's enough to get you started. Well, friends, we've amazingly talked about soil and health and farming for another hour. Thank you for being part of this conversation. I think we've had contact info in the chat. Yes, there we are. So further questions can go to any one of us. And if you have a question for Carly, please send it to me. I'm certainly happy to forward that on to her and her husband Joseph, if they're taking questions at all. But stay tuned for more of these. I think there are some future webinar plans in the works, and we're really thrilled you spent time with us today.
Thank you for being willing to learn and grow, and and we all learn from each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to pick Nicole's brain more about cover crops.
He's the one.
I think you got it. I think you unlocked the key to what works for you guys.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone.
Thanks for spending time with us.
Thank you so much.
Take care, y'all.